Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I have yet another movie review for you all, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is an action film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2019, directed by Jonas Åkerlund, and this film is called Polar. So Polar is about a company that has very highly trained and dangerous assassins, and they're led by a very eccentric boss. So these assassins are very close to each other, but the contract states that once they reach a certain age, they have to retire with $8 million and disappear, basically live a completely new life and be a completely different person. So this seems like a good thing because the main character is nearing this age, but he becomes a little bit reluctant and afraid because the retirees before him have actually been found dead. And so it actually turns out that this boss has a secret agenda, and when this main character's time for retirement comes up, he realises that those in the company that he thought were his friends have now become his foes. So whether or not he can survive to enjoy the retirement is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I am going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Polar. Ultimately, this is a very silly action film and reminded me of action films of the 80s where you've got really caricature, cartoonish world. So if you are a fan of action, I definitely think you're going to like Polar. But what I really liked about this film is that although it is very silly, there was a strong level of realism to it, and that realism is the main character played fantastically well by Mads Mikkelsen, and the supporting character that was a really torn up young lady. And so that was the emotional connection that I actually got with these people that I didn't really expect, and that's what actually created a strong level of suspense, that I didn't want to see these people get hurt. And so I really felt sorry, especially for the young lady. And so these performances actually provided a connection in a world that was so foreign, which is something I really appreciated, and something that definitely is a breath of fresh air in a very generic genre. So this is a film that I can best sum up is like a manic depressive, a bipolar, basically going on really high highs and really low lows. So you've got the caricature world that is the high, you've got far out violence, it's a very brutal film, and it's got explicit sex scenes that are there to provoke an audience. And so if you are a sensitive type, this movie is going to stick its middle finger up at you and make no apologies. And that's what Jonas Åkerlund does. He made another movie called Lords of Chaos that I absolutely loved. That was very controversial and very, very dark and hard-hitting. And so Polar is a different sort of film, but the lows that this movie produces are similar to the lows that Lords of Chaos had. And so you've got that cartoonish world, you've got a script that was very funny. I thought as though it was a naturally funny film, so Jonas Åkerlund really has an eye for humour. And I thought the boss of the film really stole the show, played by Matt Lucas, who's a British comedian. He was a really pathetic individual, but he had a really strong ego, and I just thought as though he was a lovable lunatic. And so that's everything that you want from a cartoonish sort of action world. And so you've got that high level of cartoon, violence, the car chases, which is the high, but then you have a very strong, very depressing emotional connection with the main character, who is played brilliantly by Mads Mikkelsen, and the interest that he has, which is a really torn up woman that was so sympathetic. And so this is where the low sort of serious tone comes to it. Although it does have two different tones, I never felt as though I was watching a different film. So the director handles it really, really well. And so the connection that you have with these two main characters, I thought was the realistic connection, the connection that you can have a personal, emotional attachment to. And so I thought as though, oh right, well that does bring something new within this tired genre. So I'm not a massive action fan, but I really appreciated what Jonas Åkerlund produced in this film, and it's an indication that he is very capable at what he does. And so the cinematography reminded me of Quentin Tarantino's first Kill Bill film, but it doesn't borrow Quentin Tarantino's ability to create a world. It actually has a world of its own, but it has the same sort of vibrancy in its colouring, and it's just a very out of this realm sort of feel to it. So you know you're watching a silly sort of cartoon action film, but as I said, that connection you have with the main two characters is that vessel you go along in actually connecting to real people. And so that was what I really liked. I thought the very offensive as far as its language is concerned. So it's a movie that is very hardened. So you've got very brutal kills, you've got very brutal torture scenes that took me out of nowhere. It really surprised me in a very pleasant way. But be very careful, because if you go into the movie expecting a really silly experience, you're going to get that, but it does hit you with some really serious and really brutal moments that I thought, all right, well, that was a welcome surprise, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a little bit too much for the average viewer out there. So the ending I thought was okay. It leaves it up for possibly another film, which I don't like. You've always got to make a film with the intention that it's going to be the only film, because ultimately if the next film doesn't come along, that ending doesn't really have any closure. So that's something I didn't really like. But pushing that aside, as far as action films are concerned, you do have that caricature cartoon violence, but at the same time, that really realistic sort of character development that really grounds it down to actually make that other sort of the other extreme. So you have that caricature extreme of fun, but then the low sort of extreme of that connection with really broken people. And so this woman brings out the best in the assassin, which gives him a three-dimensional approach, and you also have a three-dimensional approach to this woman because she's actually hiding something that is really going to put the cat amongst the pigeons. So everything is handled really well. I felt as though the tone was very, very good. It's a very enjoyable film, but at the same time you get a little bit more as a result. So overall, it's not a brilliant movie, but it's certainly different, and for that I'm going to give this film 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.